Somewhere on your property, maybe it's a cool back room, a basement shelf, or a cabinet tucked under the stairs, there could be food sitting right now that would still be good to eat 25 years from today. Not frozen, not refrigerated, just stored the right way, in the right containers, in the right conditions. That's not a fantasy. That's not a sales pitch. It's just food science, and it's been practiced by families for generations. Welcome to the Provident Acre. I'm glad you're here. Today, we're walking through 15 specific foods that, when properly stored, can genuinely last 2 to 3 decades. We'll cover what makes each one so shelf-stable, how to store it correctly at home, and the small details that make the difference between food that lasts and food that quietly disappoints you. Whether you're just beginning to think about a deeper pantry or you've been building one for years, there's something here for you. Food number 1: white rice. White rice is one of the most dependable, long-term staples in any pantry. Unlike brown rice, which retains its bran layer and the natural oils that come with it, white rice has had those oils milled away. That matters enormously for storage. Oils go rancid. Without them, white rice becomes chemically stable, nearly inert in the right conditions. When kept away from oxygen, moisture, light, and heat, white rice can remain safe and nutritionally viable for 25 to 30 years. This has been confirmed by testing by multiple food storage organizations, including studies conducted at Brigham Young University. How to store it. The key is eliminating oxygen. Moisture and oxygen are the two primary enemies of long-term rice storage. Your best option is to use food-grade 5-gallon buckets with Gamma Seal lids, Mylar bags, or glass jars with tight-fitting lids. If you're using Mylar bags, add oxygen absorbers before sealing. One 300cc absorber per gallon of rice is a good rule of thumb. Then heat seal the bag and place it inside a bucket for physical protection. If you're using mason jars, you can vacuum seal them with a jar attachment, or simply use oxygen absorbers and ensure the lid is tightly fitted. Store in a cool, dark location. The ideal temperature is below 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Every 10-degree rise in temperature cuts shelf life roughly in half, so a cool pantry or root cellar is ideal. Storage summary: white rice. Container: Mylar bag with absorbers inside food-grade bucket, or vacuum-sealed mason jars. Ideal temp: below 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Cooler is better. Shelf life: 25 to 30 years sealed versus 1 to 2 years after opening. Watch for yellowing or off smell, signs of moisture or rancidity. A single 50-pound bag of white rice, properly packaged, gives a family an enormous caloric reserve. It's not glamorous, but it is foundational. Food number 2: hard red or hard white wheat berries. Whole wheat berries, the intact, unmilled grain, are one of the oldest preserved foods on Earth. Archaeological wheat has been found in storage vessels thousands of years old, and while we're not relying on that, it speaks to something real. When the grain is left whole, the germ and all, it remains dormant. It's alive, technically, but in a state of near-perfect stasis. The moment you mill wheat into flour, the clock starts ticking. Oils in the germ oxidize, and that fresh flour becomes stale in weeks or months. But leave the berry whole, and you have wheat that can last 25 or more years with proper storage. You'll want a hand grain mill to use it, or a quality electric mill. That's an investment worth making for a long-term pantry. How to store it. Store wheat berries the same way as white rice. Mylar bags, oxygen absorbers, and food-grade buckets. Keep the temperature cool and consistent. Fluctuating temperatures accelerate degradation over decades. Hard red wheat has a slightly stronger, earthier flavor. Hard white wheat is milder and often preferred for bread. Both store equally well. Label every container with the date sealed and the contents. This sounds obvious, but in a full pantry years down the road, it's easy to lose track. Storage summary: wheat berries. Container: Mylar bag with O2 absorbers inside food-grade bucket. Ideal temp: 50 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Shelf life: 25 to 30 years whole versus 3 to 6 months once milled. Watch for any signs of moisture, test germination rate to verify viability. Food number 3, white granulated sugar. Pure white granulated sugar is, in a sense, already preserved by its own chemistry. Sugar at this level of refinement has virtually no water content and no protein. Bacteria and mold need moisture and nutrients to grow. Sugar provides neither. As long as moisture cannot get in, sugar won't spoil. Technically, white sugar has an indefinite shelf life. The USDA and major food storage authorities confirm that properly sealed sugar remains safe and usable indefinitely. We say 25 years because that's a comfortable, tested horizon. In reality, it may outlast all of us. How to store it? Sugar does not need oxygen absorbers. In fact, using them can cause the sugar to harden into a solid brick, not harmful, but inconvenient. The main concern is moisture and pests. Transfer sugar into food-grade buckets with tight gamma seal lids or large glass jars. You can also use mylar packs without absorbers. Add a bay leaf or two to deter pantry pests, an old-fashioned remedy that genuinely works. Keep it away from strong odors. Sugar is mildly absorbent and can take on the smell of whatever's stored nearby. Brown sugar, raw sugar, and powdered sugar do not store as long. The molasses content in brown sugar draws moisture. For the longest shelf life, stick to white granulated. Storage summary: white sugar. Container: food-grade bucket with gamma seal lid or sealed glass jars. Ideal temp: cool, dry, away from odors. Shelf life: 25 plus years, essentially indefinite when sealed. Watch for clumping from humidity, harmless, but use a desiccant packet if concerned. Food number 4, salt. Salt is perhaps the oldest preservation technology human civilization has ever known. For most of recorded history, salt was worth its weight in gold, sometimes literally. And the reason is simple: salt does not expire. Pure salt, sodium chloride, has no biological components. Nothing can consume it. It cannot oxidize, it cannot ferment. Given that it stays dry and uncontaminated, salt will last indefinitely. The salt in your sealed container today is chemically identical to what it will be in a century. The only exception is iodized salt, which can lose its iodine content over several years. If you're relying on salt as a nutritional source of iodine, keep that in mind. But from a food preservation and flavor standpoint, iodized or not, salt lasts. How to store it? Store salt in airtight glass jars or heavy-duty food-grade plastic or sealed buckets. Salt is hygroscopic, meaning it draws moisture from the air, which can cause clumping. Clumped salt is still usable, it just needs to be broken up. Keep it away from humid environments. Don't store it near the stove, the dishwasher, or any source of steam. For a deep pantry, consider storing a range of salt types: table salt, kosher salt, sea salt, and curing salt like Prague powder if you intend to cure meats. Each serves a different purpose in the kitchen and in food preservation. Storage summary: salt. Container: airtight glass jar or sealed food-grade bucket. Ideal temp: dry, room temperature, away from humid. Shelf life: indefinite. Iodine content may fade in 5 years. Watch for clumping from humidity, harmless, but use a desiccant packet if concerned. Food number 5, pure honey. Honey is extraordinary. Archaeologists have found honey in Egyptian tombs, 3,000 years old and still edible. That's not an exaggeration. Honey's chemistry makes it one of the few foods that can genuinely last indefinitely. First, honey is extremely low in moisture, too low for bacteria or yeast to survive in it. Second, it's naturally acidic, with a pH between 3 and 4.5. Third, during production, bees add an enzyme that produces small amounts of hydrogen peroxide, giving honey additional antimicrobial properties. Together, these qualities make honey essentially self-preserving. Pure, raw, uncontaminated honey will not spoil. How to store it? The key word here is pure. Honey that has been diluted, mixed with other sweeteners, or otherwise adulterated may not store as well. Look for honey labeled as pure, raw, or unfiltered, ideally sourced locally or from a trusted supplier. Store in glass jars with tight-fitting lids. Plastic containers can degrade over decades and may leach into the honey. Keep it at room temperature. Refrigeration is unnecessary and will accelerate crystallization. Crystallized honey is not spoiled. It's simply honey that has naturally solidified. You can restore it to liquid form by setting the jar in a bowl of warm water. Do not microwave it, as high heat can damage beneficial enzymes. Keep honey away from moisture. Even a small amount of water introduced by a wet spoon can begin fermentation. Storage summary: pure honey. Container: sealed glass jar with tight lid. Ideal temp: room temperature, away from light. Shelf life: indefinite when pure and properly sealed. Watch for crystallization: harmless, warm gently to liquefy. Avoid any water contamination. Food number 6, dried beans. Dried beans are a cornerstone of long-term food storage around the world, from the American homestead tradition to pantries across Latin America, Africa, and Asia, and for good reason. When properly dried and sealed, beans offer an impressive shelf life alongside excellent protein, fiber, and complex carbohydrate content. The general guideline is that dried beans can last 25 or more years in sealed, oxygen-free storage. However, there's an important nuance. Older beans take longer to cook and may never fully soften after a decade or more, even if they're still safe to eat. For the best texture and nutrition, aim to rotate your bean supply every 8 to 10 years. Black beans, pinto beans, navy beans, kidney beans, lentils all store well, though lentils and split peas tend to cook more reliably at the far end of long-term storage. How to store it. Use Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers inside food-grade buckets, just as you would for rice or wheat. Ensure the beans are completely dry before sealing. Any residual moisture will cause mold. Avoid storing flavored or pre-seasoned bean mixes for the long term, as added ingredients can reduce shelf life significantly. Label clearly: bean type, date sealed. Rotate regularly and use what you store. Storage summary: dried beans. Container: Mylar bag with O2 absorbers in food-grade bucket. Ideal temp: below 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Shelf life: 25 plus years safe. Best cooking quality within 8 to 10 years. Watch for signs of moisture on sealing. Older beans require longer soaking and cooking times. Food number 7, rolled oats. Oats are comforting, versatile, and with proper storage, remarkably long-lasting. They've been a staple of family pantries and farmstead kitchens for generations, and they deserve a place in yours. Rolled oats and steel-cut oats, when sealed with oxygen absorbers, can last 20 to 30 years in storage. They're calorie-dense, filling, and can be used for breakfast porridge, baked goods, thickening soups, and even as a flour substitute when ground. Unlike wheat berries, you don't need a mill. Oats are ready to cook right out of the bag. That simplicity makes them especially valuable. How to store it. Oats contain natural oils that can go rancid when exposed to oxygen, so oxygen absorbers are essential. Package in Mylar bags, seal tightly, and place in a food-grade bucket. Quick oats have been processed more aggressively and tend to store slightly less long than rolled or steel-cut oats. For maximum shelf life, choose old-fashioned rolled or steel-cut. Once a bag is opened, transfer remaining oats to a sealed glass jar and use within 1 to 2 years for best quality. Storage summary: rolled oats. Container: Mylar bag with O2 absorbers in a food-grade bucket. Ideal temp: cool, dry, below 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Shelf life: 20 to 30 years sealed. Watch for rancid or off smell. Always inspect before using long-term stored oats. Food number 8, powdered milk. Dairy is one of the most perishable food categories, but when milk is reduced to powder, it becomes one of the most shelf-stable. The dehydration process removes nearly all moisture, and when that powder is sealed in an oxygen-free environment, it can remain usable for 20 to 25 years. Powdered milk is particularly valuable because it provides protein, calcium, and fat, nutrients that are harder to get from grains and legumes alone. It can be reconstituted into drinking milk, used in baking, added to soups and sauces, or mixed into other foods. Non-fat dry milk stores the longest, as it contains no fat that could go rancid. White whole milk powder has a shorter shelf life, around 2 to 5 years, due to its fat content. How to store it. Look for commercially sealed non-fat dry milk in sealed metal cans with nitrogen flush, or package it yourself in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers. Once opened, store in a sealed container and use within 1 to 2 years for best quality. Keep powdered milk away from strong odors, as it can absorb them. A cool, dark, dry location is ideal. For families with young children, powdered milk is especially worth prioritizing. Storage summary: non-fat powdered milk. Container: commercially sealed metal cans or Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers. Ideal temp: cool, dark, dry, below 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Shelf life: 20 to 25 years, non-fat, 1 to 2 years, white whole milk powder. Watch for clumping or off flavor, signs of moisture or age. Food number 9, pasta, white. Dried pasta, made from durum semolina and water, is another pantry staple that quietly punches above its weight in the long-term storage world. It's dense in calories, easy to cook, beloved by children and adults alike, and when stored correctly, it can last 25 or more years. Like white rice, white pasta has had the oils largely removed through processing, which means there's very little to go rancid. In a sealed, low-oxygen environment, it simply stays stable. Choose pasta shapes that pack efficiently: spaghetti, penne, rotini, or elbow macaroni. Store in bulk and rotate periodically. How to store it. For quantities of several pounds or more, use Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers, then into buckets. For smaller quantities, jars on a pantry shelf, a well-sealed glass or food-grade plastic container will keep pasta good for 5 to 10 years easily. Pasta is one of the easiest foods to store casually, and the commercial packaging it comes in, cardboard boxes, is not suitable for very long-term storage. Transfer to better containers if you're planning for decades rather than months. Storage summary: white dried pasta. Container: Mylar bag with O2 absorbers in bucket or sealed glass jar for short term. Ideal temp: cool, dark, dry. Shelf life: 25 to 30 years in Mylar, 3 to 5 years in original packaging. Watch for brittleness or off smell. Pasta that crumbles excessively may be very old. Food number 10, baking soda and baking powder. These two are easy to overlook, but they belong in every long-term pantry. Without a leavening agent, your 25-year supply of wheat and flour cannot make risen bread, biscuits, pancakes, or cake. Baking soda, pure sodium bicarbonate, has an indefinite shelf life when kept dry and sealed. It does not expire in a meaningful sense. However, it can lose potency when exposed to air and humidity over time. Baking powder is a compound of baking soda and an acid, typically cream of tartar. It has a shorter effective life, about 1 year after opening, but sealed in an airtight container, it remains effective for many years. How to store it. Store baking soda in glass jars with tight lids. It's also useful as a cleaner, deodorizer, and antacid, so it earns its pantry space several times over. For baking powder, seal in a glass jar with a tight lid. Test it before use. Add a teaspoon to hot water. It should bubble immediately and vigorously. If it doesn't, it's lost its leavening power. Rotate a generous supply of both, and rotate annually. Storage summary: baking soda and baking powder. Container: sealed glass jar with tight-fitting lid. Ideal temp: cool, dry, away from humidity. Shelf life: baking soda indefinite. Baking powder 1 to 2 years after opening, longer sealed. Watch for Test baking powder in hot water before use to verify activity. Food number 11. Dried herbs and spices. A pantry full of plain grains and legumes will keep you alive. A pantry with dried herbs and spices will keep you cooking, and there's a meaningful difference between surviving and living well, especially over years and decades. Dried herbs and spices, thyme, rosemary, oregano, basil, cumin, coriander, black pepper, cinnamon, paprika, and dozens more, can last 25 or more years in sealed storage without spoiling. They may lose some aromatic potency over time, but they remain safe and useful. Whole spices, peppercorns, coriander seeds, cumin seeds, retain their flavor longer than pre-ground versions. If possible, store whole and grind as needed. How to store it. Glass jars are ideal, airtight, opaque, or stored in a dark place and kept away from heat and moisture. Mason jars work beautifully. Avoid storing spices above the stove. The heat and steam are the enemy of long-term storage. A pantry shelf, a cabinet, or a dedicated spice drawer away from heat is far better. Consider buying in bulk from ethnic grocery stores or online suppliers. You'll pay a fraction of what small grocery store jars cost, and you can portion into your own jars with proper labels and dates. Storage summary. Dried herbs and spices. Container, sealed glass jars, kept in dark, cool location. Ideal temp, cool, dry, away from stove heat. Shelf life, 25 plus years, safe. Best flavor in the first 3 to 5 years. Watch for loss of aroma, still usable, just use a bit more, or moisture clumping. Food number 12. Vinegar. White distilled vinegar is another pantry item with essentially an indefinite shelf life. It's self-preserving by nature. The acidity of vinegar, a pH around 2.4, creates an environment where bacteria simply cannot survive. The FDA has confirmed that properly stored vinegar does not spoil. Vinegar earns its place in a long-term pantry not just as a food, but as a preserving agent. It's how you make pickles, how you preserve vegetables, how you can fruits and chutneys safely. It's a tool of self-sufficiency as much as it is a pantry staple. Apple cider vinegar, white vinegar, and red wine vinegar all store well, though white distilled is the longest lasting and most versatile for preservation purposes. How to store it. Keep vinegar in its original glass bottle or transfer to glass containers with tight-fitting lids. Plastic containers are generally fine for storage, though glass is preferable for very long term. Store in a cool, dark place. Vinegar can develop harmless sediment, what's sometimes called the mother, over time. This is not spoilage. Stock several gallons if you plan to do any serious canning or preserving. Storage summary. White distilled vinegar. Container, original glass bottle or sealed glass container. Ideal temp, cool, dark, room temperature fine. Shelf life, indefinite. Watch for clouding or sediment is harmless. Shake before use. Food number 13. Hardtack or dry crackers. Hardtack, a simple, unleavened cracker made from flour, water, and salt, has fed soldiers, sailors, and pioneers for centuries, and it still deserves a place in a modern homestead pantry. When made properly and stored correctly, hardtack can last 20 to 50 years. It contains no fat, no yeast, and almost no moisture, the three primary catalysts of food spoilage. It's not delicious by itself, but it's calorie-dense, easy to transport, and remarkably stable. You can bake it yourself with just flour, water, and salt. The key is getting it genuinely dry all the way through during baking, then storing it in airtight conditions. Commercially made dry biscuits or pilot crackers follow the same principle. Many survival food companies sell hardtack in sealed tins with decades-long shelf lives. Hardtack is best eaten softened in broth, soup, or water, a tradition going back hundreds of years. Storage summary. Hardtack. Container, sealed tins, glass jars, or mylar bags with O2 absorbers. Ideal temp, cool, dark, away from moisture. Shelf life, 20 to 50 years when properly dried and sealed. Watch for softness or mold, signs of moisture intrusion. Food number 14. Coconut oil, refined. Fat is essential in a long-term pantry, not just for cooking, but for nutrition. And among shelf-stable fats, refined coconut oil stands out as one of the most stable and versatile options available. Refined coconut oil, due to its high saturated fat content and low water content, is significantly more resistant to oxidation than most cooking oils. Sealed and stored properly, it can last 2 years at room temperature and significantly longer, up to 5 years or more, in cool, dark conditions. While this is shorter than some foods on our list, it's exceptional for a cooking fat. Refined coconut oil has a neutral flavor, a high smoke point, and is solid at room temperature below about 76 degrees, all qualities that make it practical in a variety of cooking situations. How to store it. Store in glass jars with tight lids. Keep away from light and heat. If you live in a warmer climate, store in your coolest, darkest space. Coconut oil can be purchased in large quantities and repackaged into mason jars for easier storage and access. Other stable fat options worth storing: ghee, clarified butter in sealed jars up to a year at room temperature, and commercial canned shortening. Rotate all fats regularly. Storage summary: refined coconut oil. Container: glass jars with tight lids. Ideal temp: cool and dark. Below 76 degrees, it remains solid. Shelf life: 2+ years at room temperature, 5+ years in ideal cool storage. Watch for rancid smell, the primary sign of degradation. Food number 15, apple cider vinegar with the mother. We close with something that might surprise you: apple cider vinegar, specifically the raw, unfiltered variety that contains the live culture known as the mother. This is distinct from the distilled white vinegar we discussed earlier. Raw apple cider vinegar is a living product with centuries of use in folk medicine, food preservation, and household management, and it has an indefinite shelf life. The acidity of raw apple cider vinegar, typically around 5% acidity, makes it self-preserving, just like distilled vinegar, but raw ACV carries additional value in a homesteading context. It can be used as a digestive aid, a natural cleaning agent, a meat tenderizer, a flavor agent in cooking and salad dressings. It is one of the most multi-purpose items you can store. How to store it. Store in glass bottles with tight-fitting lids. Unlike distilled vinegar, raw ACV should not be stored in metal containers, as the acid can react with the metal over time. The mother may settle to the bottom or form strands throughout the liquid. This is normal and desirable. Shake gently before use. Keep in a cool, dark location. Avoid refrigeration unless the bottle has been opened for a very long time. Consider stocking several gallons. Few pantry items earn their shelf space as completely as raw apple cider vinegar. Storage summary: raw apple cider vinegar. Container: glass bottles with tight lids, not metal. Ideal temp: cool, dark location. Room temperature fine. Shelf life: indefinite. No spoilage concerns. The mother settling or floating is normal. 15 foods. Some of them have been used by families for thousands of years. Some are the result of careful modern food science. All of them have one thing in common: they give you options. They give you the freedom to feed your family from your own home, from your own preparation, without relying on a supply chain that, as many of us have seen in recent years, can be fragile in ways we don't always anticipate. Building a deep pantry doesn't have to happen all at once. It doesn't require a large investment on any single day. It's more like a garden. You tend to it slowly, consistently, and over time, it becomes something that can sustain you. Start with 1 or 2 things from today's list: a bucket of white rice, a few jars of honey, a pound of salt. See how it feels to have them there, then add more. The peace of mind that comes from a well-stocked pantry is quiet and understated. It doesn't announce itself, but it's there every day in the background, the way a good homestead should be. If this video was useful to you, if even one thing on this list is going to make its way onto your shelves, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It's the most direct way you can support this channel and help us keep making content like this. We'd also love to hear from you in the comments. What's already in your long-term pantry? Is there a food we didn't cover that you swear by? Every comment helps us understand what you're interested in and what to cover next. If you're new to the Provident Acre, welcome. We're a family homesteading channel focused on practical, grounded self-sufficiency, from the garden to the pantry to the land itself. We don't do alarm. We don't do panic. We just do the work, step by step, and we invite you to do it with us.